Hello everyone, it's me. I'm back to asking questions no one else is really that bothered about, such as, have we reached the point of no return with climate change? And, lazy bird, where the fuggering buck have you been? I thought you were dead. And no, I'm not dead. I know, I can't believe it either. So the past year has been quite turbulent for me, as I'm sure it has been for many people. With regards to my own experience, without going into too much detail, my attempts at drafting the script for my second video were scarpered by the cost of living crisis forcing me to cut my toddler's nursery attendance right back and look after them a lot more during the day, a semi-mental health crisis which I'm still trying to work through, but has caused me to take a step back from some of my activities to focus more on self-care, and taking on more responsibilities at work with the hopes of getting a much needed promotion, which has meant that when I have had any free time to potentially work on video ideas, I've been too physically and mentally exhausted to do so. Or, I'm just lazy. I mean, it is in the name. But yeah, I know I don't really have any followers or subscribers, but I'm still sorry to those who have been following me that I haven't been fully focused this past year. That'll teach me for suggesting I'd upload a new video each month. What planet was I on when I made that suggestion? Anyways, after scrapping a script for a different topic, which I realised was ballooning into a monster of a video, I've decided to try and ease myself gently back into things, so we'll attempt to keep this video short and stick to a single topic. So what am I going to be discussing today? Well, boys and girls, you know how much I love digging up bits of childhood from my brain that no one else really remembers or is bothered about, so I thought let's take a trip down memory lane and ask ourselves, what do we get if we take Alvin and the Chipmunks and mash it together with Peppa Pig while sprinkling in a dash of marionettes, dated pop culture references and celebrity guest stars? We get the much beloved Pinky and Perky. Pinky and Perky were the creation of husband and wife team Jan and Vlasta Dalibor, two Czechoslovakian refugees who smuggled themselves into Britain during the aftermath of World War II in 1948, which probably explains the spaced out looks on Pinky and Perky's faces. Those pigs would probably have been able to sympathise a lot with today's Ukrainian refugees. It was apparently Vlasta who suggested the characters should be pigs, as they were seen as a symbol of good luck in their home country. The two pigs were initially differentiated by the colours they wore. Pinky wore red and Perky wore blue, but with the show being shot in black and white, the main way of telling them apart was that Perky wore a hat. They first appeared in the programme It's Up to You by Bernie Colhan in 1956, but were barely used. It was Colhan who suggested that they become a feature in their own show, which would first air in 1957 on BBC One. The show would switch networks during the original run, airing on BBC One from 1957 to 1968, and then on ITV from 1968 to 1972 before its cancellation. The show was produced by Thames Television rather than in-house for the BBC, hence the reason they were able to switch networks. The main format of the show was that the two pigs run their own TV station called PPC TV and would host celebrity guests and live performances from puppet bands parodying the pop groups of the time, such as the Beatles, an obvious parody of the Beatles. They would host the show with a human partner who would end up being at the receiving end of whatever gags they were playing, depending on the theme of the episode. This role was filled by numerous actors, including John Slater, Roger Moffat, Jimmy Thompson, Brian Burden, and Fred Emney. Notable human guest stars included Michael Aspel, Stratford Jones, Freddie and the Dreamers, and Henry Cooper. Other puppets would appear on the show as well, including Ambrose Cat, Horace Hare, Basil Bloodhound, Morton Frog, Conchilla the Cow, Bertie Bonkers, the Baby Elephant, and the sultry Vera Vixen, who looked like a cross between Eartha Kitt and Basil Brush, plus a seemingly endless supply of mice. The show would go on to become really successful during its original run, even managing to gain enough popularity in the US to make 6 appearances on the then prestigious Ed Sullivan Show, as well as having their own show in Las Vegas for a year. It spawned numerous merchandise, such as comics and toys, with the songs in the show getting released in albums, singles and EPs. It was kind of the blueprint for kid-friendly versions of pop albums you can get nowadays, such as Kids Bop and the like. With its fame also came some controversy, as there was one episode the BBC actually banned in 1966 because it was considered too political. The episode was called You Too Can Be a Prime Minister, with its airing postponed until the day after polling day for fear of any political content before the general election that year. Jimmy Thompson recalled how he couldn't understand what all the fuss was about with regards to the episode content, quoting, "All that happens is I stand for election, have cabbages thrown at me, and when I eventually arrive at number 10, I find Pinky and Perky already there." Jan Talabor went on to recall how ironically, when the episode was finally able to air, it attracted more viewers than Harold Wilson's Party Political Broadcast, which was airing on ITV at the same time. I would laugh at how precious the BBC responded to political pressures back in the 60s, but then considering the recent controversy surrounding Gary Lineker at the time of writing this script, I'm inclined to think not much has changed, and I'm not sure whether to find that sad or horrifying. Moving on swiftly. So yeah, a fun, weird little comedy show full of marionettes and stupid gags, which I loved watching as a kid. This is another show that could have fallen into obscurity by the late 1980s if it were not for the emergence of the VHS format and the subsequent redistribution of surviving episodes on said format, in a similar vein to the Watch with Mother shows. This brought on a renewed interest in the show, with the pigs even making appearances in a short-lived CITV show, The Pig Attraction, in 1993. It would later be remade into a new CGI animated show in 2008. But I'm not going to talk about that because, much like the revived Watch with Mother shows in the early 2000s, I never watched the newer shows as I was knee-deep in university life by that point and I wasn't even aware it existed. No, I'm purely sticking to the original show and specifically the one VHS tape that I watched to death. In terms of VHS releases, the only one that seemed to be released was titled Pinky and Perky and Co., released in 1990. I discovered recently that it was reissued in 1993 in a horrifying 3D box that featured coconuts that actually sing at you if you press the button on it. But I didn't own that box, probably a good thing as it might have given me nightmares as a child. No, I just owned the bog standard original VHS box. It contained 3 episodes, where there's life, there's soap, Zed Pigs, and You Too Can Be a Disc Jockey. The episodes were only about 15 minutes long each, and all follow a very similar structure, so I will just discuss the first episode on this video in detail. The show opens with the titular pigs driving to their underground broadcasting station, which just so happens to be right next to the BBC television centre. That's convenient, whilst playing the theme song, We Belong Together. It's a really nice song in my opinion. It brought back a lot of warm, fuzzy feelings, which have only been slightly dampened over the years, probably thanks to an oversaturation of those bloody chipmunks. Seriously, how is that show still going? After the intro, we get introduced to our tea-drinking human co-presenter, Jimmy Thompson, who is immediately told by the man down the phone that they are going to be advertising soap powder for the programme this week, much to his delight. However, before he's even had a chance to relay the news to them, the cheeky pigs were already getting stuck into doing their own thing, which just so happens to be a song that introduces the infamous coconuts on the VHS box art. I think this was the first time I ever heard the song I've Got a Lovely Bunch of Coconuts, and I'd like to think I'm not the only person in my age group whose first introduction to the song was either through this show or when Rowan Atkinson sings it in The Lion King. Either way, I like how comically bad the coconut marionettes move, how Thompson responds to the puppets with such apathy, and how it sets up just how little of a shit Pinky and Perky give to Thompson. And of course, being British, Thompson allows the puppets to finish their musical number before attempting to set them straight. I'd also like to note that the piggy bank that they use to collect payments for coconut shaves is labelled Pinky Bank, which implies Pinky is the main controller of the purse strings, rather than it being shared between the pigs. Just thought that was an interesting tidbit. Make of that what you will. Well, thanks to some more coconut shenanigans, Thompson spills tea all over his shirt and decides the best way to advertise the soap powder would be to wash his own shirt and show off the results, a la every single soap advert that's ever existed. It's already a minus point for creativity. He then realises that they don't have a washing machine, to which the pigs suggest using the tea kettle, only problem being it's full of tea. Thus we go into our next song, titled Drinking Song, whilst the puppets force feed Thompson cups of tea on a conveyor belt, and even make him pay 3 shillings per cup for the privilege. This leaves Thompson completely drenched in tea, and probably desperate for the toilet after drinking all that, so he decides he wants to go smarten up, requesting the puppets clean and press his suit whilst also washing his shirt with the new soap powder, which is done to the instrumental tune of The Stripper, in a very comical fashion. I do love how Pinky straight up tries to burn him with an iron when he asks for his suit to be pressed, and when Thompson says, "Not like that if you don't mind," he responds with, "No."
Not whilst I'm in it, if you don't mind.
No.
It's always a moment that makes me chuckle and really cements the chemistry between Thompson and the pigs. It's a bit bizarre seeing Thompson undress behind a screen and literally put a barrel on over himself to this tune. Even the dog seems a bit surprised by it. But at least he was smart enough not to trust the puppets with his undies.
Pinky! Perky!
Whoa, what on earth were you doing down there, Pinky? Thompson then asks Pinky to smarten him up, making reference to Michael Aspel on the telly, aka the celebrity guest for this episode, which leads to this lovely cover of Dev Douglas's I Don't Like Being Posh, as sung by Horace Hare.
Oh, I don't like being posh, I don't like being posh, give me back me flipping barra that I used to have before.
Also, I used to find the end where his trousers fell down hilarious as a kid. A height of comedy. Meanwhile, Pinky and Perky's attempts to shave and groom Thompson go about as well as can be expected, leaving his fingers and face covered in bandages, much to his dismay. Well, what did he expect when neither of them have opposable thumbs? He then goes on to discover that they not only dyed his shirt a different colour by mixing it in with his suit, but have also shrunk his suit in the wash. Fan-tucking-tastic. Oh well, never mind Jim. Let's have a laugh about it and listen to Freddie and the Dreamers' Who Wears Short Shorts, sung by this beaky bunch.
Who wears short shorts? We wear short shorts! Yeah, who wears short shorts? We wear short shorts!
Cheers guys! Now get dressed into your shrunken dyed suit before Michael Aspel gets here. It's at this point he discovers that he's misheard the chap on the phone, and they've actually been sent soup powder to advertise. And apparently his clothes now taste like green pea and ham.
Green pea and ham. Nothing personal, you understand.
Once Thompson proclaims that they need to think of something quick to advertise soup, it cuts to the advert being broadcast from PPC TV to the tune of Manfred Mann's Hubble Bubble.
Bubble, bubble, toilet trouble.
Thompson is frantically chopping vegetables to go in the bubbling pot whilst being sung at by a patronising crow, and cutting to Vera Vixen trotting along carrying a box of Hubley, which turns out to be the brand of soup they're advertising. Poor Jimmy is on the verge of a breakdown after tasting his disgusting soup, whilst the pigs are as chill as can be, happily tasting the Hubley brand soup with Michael Aspel, who gives a cheeky wink to the camera, and the episode ends with the cheery theme song and some charming outro art. What a couple of trolls. The other two episodes follow a similar structure, with Thompson getting orders from the big boss, the cheeky pigs playing pranks on him, and the guest star delivering the ultimate punchline. In the episode Z Pigs, Thompson is attempting to do a Dixon of Dock Green tribute, whilst Pinky and Perky would rather do Z Cars. The episode You Two Can Be a Disc Jockey is Thompson attempting to do a DJ show, and everything going wrong thanks to the puppet's attempts to try and help him. As a child, I loved the light-hearted silliness of it, and it was nice watching it with my mum, who remembered the show fondly from her own childhood. As an adult, I still enjoy the gags and actually appreciate how different the humour must have been compared to other puppet shows at the time. The rebellious nature of the pigs against their more stiff upper lip human co-host, reflecting the sweeping social movement and pushback against traditional British institutions that had begun developing in the 60s, and it was genius of them to incorporate pop songs and guest stars and cynical humour into a format that could have easily been written off as something cute for little kids. It made it feel more modern for its time, and being so accessible to both adults and children, it's no wonder it was a smash hit in both the UK and beyond. Sure, some could find the pigs' squeaky voices and antics highly annoying, and being mostly a comedy sketch show, it lacks the depth of what Jerry Anderson was starting to bring to the medium at the time. But if you're looking into vintage marionette shows and want something entertaining and silly that doesn't take up too much of your time, then I'd highly recommend it. Now, in terms of watching the show, it's another one of those cases that didn't really get any follow-up home releases beyond the VHS format, or at least that's as far as I can gather. As so far, any DVD listings I've found seem to be from the 2008 revival show, not the classic. I can't even seem to find a list of episodes beyond the 3 surviving ones on the VHS I had, and You Two Can Be a Prime Minister. The video I mentioned before has thankfully been uploaded to the Internet Archive, but other than MP3s for some of the songs released, I can't find much else on them, not even the infamous Prime Minister episode. The only other VHS releases besides the one I covered, and the infamous Pink Box, which is the same tape but in a 3D box with singing coconuts, is a VHS release for The Pig Attraction, which they guest starred in as mentioned earlier. Maybe I'll make a video about that show someday. There are some surviving clips of their performances of certain pop songs on YouTube, but otherwise it seems that much like Watch with Mother, most of the original series has become lost media, which is a shame, and I kind of hope I'm proven wrong someday. But hey, they released a lot of books, and comics, and albums, and LPs, and EPs on vinyl. So if you're into chipmunk singing, or collecting their vintage memorabilia, then there's always that, I guess. In conclusion, I'm kind of reiterating what I've said before. It's a weird, quirky and almost lost piece of British pop culture, with living memory of its original broadcast likely to die off by my parents' generation, so I thought it deserved to be documented in one of my weird little videos. I'm just sorry there's not much left to share about the original show, though I'd like to think the characters themselves will live on through the attempts to archive their presence via the internet, even if it is just some random bird like myself poking it with a stick and saying, "Here, I remember these two pigs from a video I used to watch. They're like Alvin and the Chipmunks, if they actually had charm." And on that note, I think it's best to let these sleeping pigs lie. Thank you for watching, and I certainly hope it won't be another year before I upload another video. Goodbye!